So first, an apology. I wrote the title before I wrote the presentation because, John wanted a title. Get on the program. And I changed the title since then. And I didn't tell anybody. I just told myself. So same topic. So you can see my slide, right? Great ideas for your syllabus. Okay. So it's because it didn't narrow down to 3. So I had to take out the 3. Great ideas for your syllabus to promote growth, mindset, and equity, the student experience project. And what drew me to the student experience project was actually an article in Inside Higher Ed, because they put out a first day toolkit, I want to say in like March or April, and they got a little press about it. So I went to dig. I'd never heard of any of these words put together in that way. So I went to dig and found the student experience project, which is it's an interesting project. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the student experience project and generally what they have to offer. Then we're going to look at a few slides from their first day toolkit. And then we're going to focus on one of the aspects of their first day toolkit, which is growth mindset, setting expectations using growth mindset. So 3 pieces. And feel free to jump in at any time. So the Student Experience Project, and this is straight off their website, it's a collaborative of university leaders, faculty, researchers, and national education organizations that are doing innovative research-based practices to increase degree attainment by building equitable learning environments and fostering a sense of belonging on campus. And that extra highlighting is mine. Those are really the 2 pieces that they look at: sense of belonging and student supports that increase equity. So all of their work is around those 2 things. And together they use research to test, implement, and scale innovative practices that can transform the college experience. And one of the things that makes this project, I think, unique is the real focus on faculty input. So for the Student Experience Project, these are the organizational partners. We'll be looking more at the College Transition Collaborative, which is an interesting partner. The College Transition Collaborative is not big. It's not huge, but it is collaborative. It's a group of researchers, primarily psychologists, but also from other fields, whose area of study is student transition into college and student success. So in Texas, I knew David Yeager, who's at University of Texas, Austin. If you know his work, for example, he is a collaborator, one of the co-founders of the College Transition Collaborative. So they're good people. And for university partners for the Student Experience Project, these are their institutional partners that are doing testing on campus. So one of the things that the SEP has done is that they've developed a practices library that is kind of cool. You should totally go look at it. So the practices library is housed on the College Transition Collaborative website. And I will put that website in the chat real quick for those of you on Zoom. And it includes, let me show you a snapshot. So just for example, the skill that we're going to look at today is using a growth mindset approach to establishing expectations. So this is what the practices library looks like. So for each of the practices, it introduces it, little introduction. It provides steps to think about, stepwise process, specific examples of how that skill might look, either on the syllabus or on an assignment or in class, specific examples, pitfalls to avoid, and most of them also have a checklist. So if you want to try this new practice that you haven't tried, here's a stepwise way to approach it. Here are some specific examples that you can use. Here's some things to avoid, and here's a checklist to make sure that you considered everything important. So just so you don't have to go look right now, here's a rundown of what's in their practice library so far. There's going to be 2 or 3 slides on this. So they have, and some of them appear in more than one place because they fit in more than one place. So they have effective social belonging messages, effective growth mindset culture messages, how to do a syllabus review, how to do a policy review to see if your course policies are student-centered. And those are things like attendance policies and late policies, how you talk about disability accommodations in your syllabus, those kinds of things. The growth mindset approach in establishing expectations that we're going to be looking at in more detail, ensuring classroom identity safety, creating a belonging story, encouraging connections in the classroom. If you heard Josh Eiler's keynote yesterday from the Student Success Symposium, he touched briefly on wise feedback framings. And if you thought, I don't know what that is, you can go look at this practice library and we'll give you a nice little introduction to wise feedback and how you could use that in class and pitfalls to avoid. Creating an attuned assessment wrapper, supporting self-efficacy by integrating self-relevance and a sense of purpose into your course, ensuring classroom identity safety is in this spot as well, addressing an identity-threatening incident in class, and supporting financially stressed students. So some really nice topics. And again, their guidelines are stepwise and very clear and have specific examples. And all the guidelines in their practice library have been faculty tested by at least 100 faculty, is my understanding. So they've also gotten a lot of feedback. And the last thing that they have in their practice toolkit is the first day toolkit. And the first day toolkit is a package of several of things they have, as well as it includes an online module. If you want to watch someone provide the instruction on, they have someone who's recorded the videos, as well as a syllabus review guide. And they also recommend as part of that, the first day practices, including course policy review, the growth mindset approach. And then there are some resources for administrators, including some we're going to look at right now. So that's a review of the student experience project and their kind of practice portfolio. And it really, I have had many experiences, I don't know if you have as well, where you're like, I'm going to try this new thing, and then it goes really badly. And then you iterate it over time and it goes better and better. But wouldn't it be nice if you could skip a couple of those first iterations by checking out like the pitfalls that are on the list and avoiding those pitfalls that, you know, save you a couple semesters of doing it not so well. So one of the things that is provided as an administrator tool are some slides for the first day toolkit. Generally, I just don't like to use other people's slides because it's weird for me. You know, my brain doesn't work that way. However, these are good. So we're going to use a few of these, and these are straight from the first day toolkit, and including the stuff I'm saying comes from now comes from the first day toolkit. And what they really emphasize in the first day toolkit is that when students enter college and when they're at transitional moments throughout their college careers, they ask themselves key questions about whether they belong and whether they can succeed. And the way that they answer those questions determines whether or not they reach out for support and whether they hang in there through the challenges or not. And while they're asking themselves those questions about whether they belong and whether they can succeed, they're looking at environmental and interpersonal cues around at the institution to give them answers to those questions. And the cues that they get about whether they belong and they can succeed will differ between groups and among individuals based on their local academic and social context, the stereotypes that are relevant to their group, and their group's historical and continuing disadvantage. Essentially, students who come from structurally disadvantaged groups, they come to campus knowing that they're going to face underrepresentation, that they're going to face negative cultural stereotypes about their abilities and other barriers. So they're paying particular attention to signals from the institution and from their professors and other students about whether they or people like them belong on campus and can succeed there. So we're going to do, I think, about 8 slides from the first day toolkit that they provided that I thought were really good. Oh, actually, except we just talked about this one. So they're asking themselves these 2 questions. So let's move on to the next one. So learning mindsets do matter. When students run into challenges like struggles with difficult course material, or feeling intimidated by their professors. And they think it's not typical to experience those things. It's understandable that they can take that as a sign that they don't belong or they can't succeed. So research shows that once students draw that conclusion that they don't belong and that they can't succeed, it leads them to disengage academically, like not ask questions in class, and to disengage socially, like not joining a study group or going to an extracurricular event. This in turn will affect their performance and their retention. So that's on the left side of this little diagram here. If, however, students believe that it's typical to face challenges and they believe it's possible to overcome those challenges, when they are challenged, it typically leads to greater engagement because it gives them some motivation to build on that challenge, to ask those questions, to go to office hours, and to engage in other ways. Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset helps us to better understand how students are navigating these concerns. Individuals with a growth mindset understand that abilities can be grown through hard work, the use of effective strategies, and help from others. Growth mindset is usually contrasted with fixed mindset and belief that intelligence is a fixed trait that you either have or that you don't have, and that it's set in stone, relatively speaking, at birth. When a student gets a poor grade on an assignment or a test, if this student has a fixed mindset about intelligence, when they receive the poor grade, they're more likely to interpret the poor grade by saying something like, maybe I'm stupid at this, maybe I'm not a math person, if I try, it's not going to make any difference. The result is decreased effort as a behavioral response, which then diminishes academic engagement and performance. If, however, the student has a growth mindset and believes that intelligence and abilities can be grown and developed, they can take a negative grade and think about it in different ways. Instead of taking it as a signal that they are stupid or not up to snuff when it comes to a particular field or area, instead they think, maybe I just haven't mastered this yet. I need to work harder or take a new approach or ask a question or go to office hours. So this results in an increase in effort and a use of positive learning strategies, which further increases students' academic engagement and performance. I'm going to give you an example, not based on intelligence. When I was a child, I had exercise-induced asthma, which if you have any kids or friends as a child, you know that that's actually incredibly common. Very common to have exercise-induced asthma. But I also was not a particularly active child, so I wasn't super coordinated. You know, you can't throw and catch very well if you never throw and catch with anyone, right? It takes practice and effort. So as a child, when I would get asthma, my parents would encourage me to disengage and say, oh, you can't do this, it's going to make you sick. And since I already didn't like it very much, it was really easy for me to disengage in a very easy interpretation, which means that I never got more coordinated. I never engaged in those kinds of team sports because I took the feedback around me and the signals that if I put more effort in, it wouldn't pay off. It would just make me sick. Instead, children around me were getting the feedback, if you can't throw and catch very well, or if you can't hit the ball or whatever, that means you need to practice and then you get better at it. Those kids were getting better and I was becoming more disengaged. And actually, I wrote my first fake parent note as a child. Instead of like not turning in the assignment or missing class or whatever, my first fake parent note, we'll just say it was the only one, just so my only, was to get out of PE because of this experience of disengagement over time. So if a student is given even very subtle feedback, you're just not smart enough for this work, it contributes to disengagement, which ends up making them worse and worse in their performance and solidifies this kind of interpretation. In contrast, learning mindset can increase performance. And more recent research has very clearly demonstrated that students' perceptions of instructor mindset influence how students feel about their own abilities. and that it has a critical impact on students' experiences and academic outcomes. This is because if students believe that they can learn and grow, but our courses are not designed to let them do that, or we may convey in the course, whether it's accurate or not, that we believe that some of them just can't do it, then it doesn't matter that the student has a growth mindset. It's more important that the instructor is communicating that failure is it's just something that's going to happen to some students because they just can't cut it. In other words, students may not be able to use their growth mindset because they're learning in an environment that isn't conducive to growing their abilities. So for example, let's say you're taking the I'm going to be super tough on the first day approach. I'm going to emphasize the difficulty of the class. I'm going to call students' attention to the high drop rate or the high failure rate in the course. Saying something like, if you're not a science person, you should consider dropping the course. So sometimes instructors will do this with the intention that I'm trying to motivate the students into working hard and prioritizing the course, but the unintended consequence can be that students perceive the instructor has a fixed mindset about their abilities and that no matter what they're going to do, they may not be able to be successful. Now, because students are aware of pervasive stereotypes about group membership, when they perceive that their instructor has a fixed mindset, they can make inferences based on stereotypes. So if they think their instructor has a fixed mindset and they're aware of stereotypes in the world, they may think that that fixed mindset particularly is in response to those stereotypes. So saying the instructor may expect men to have higher abilities than women in STEM courses, or the instructor may expect white and Asian students to have higher abilities than Black, Latino, and Native American students. So it's this combination of having a fixed mindset approach with cultural stereotypes, none of which, by the way, the instructor may need to say. It's the perception that when they're starting to say, this course is so challenging, if you can't cut it, you should probably drop. And students who are at risk of perceiving those stereotypes already may match them to the stereotypes. So here, when an instructor says things like, this course builds on material from Bio 101. If you need to review those concepts, we can connect you to resources. Or, it's normal to be challenged by material at some point in the term. Please reach out for help. The instructor is setting the foundation and expectations that students' abilities can grow, and students can perceive that the instructor has a growth mindset. And in turn, they may infer that the instructor will be willing to work with them and engage them in the course, and that the instructor expects them to be able to be successful. So let's look at a couple of studies. This is still from the toolkit. In this one, this study looked at instructor mindset and its impact on student outcomes. In this study, researchers had 150 STEM instructors at selective public universities participate in a survey measuring the degree to which they had a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. These instructors covered 602 courses over 7 semesters and a total of over 15,000 students. And they looked at the relationship between the instructors' mindsets and the performance of students in their classes. They found that instructors who reported that they had a fixed mindset had a racial academic outcome disparity in their class that was more than twice as large as in the courses taught by growth mindset instructors. Does that make sense? Now, that language is important. It doesn't say that the study does not conclude that these instructors had racist beliefs. It also doesn't conclude that they had racist actions. What it says is when they're subtly communicating that mindset, students are responding in this way. In this second study, there was a sample of 217 undergraduates, and students were told that a calculus professor at the university was working with the psychology department to test a placement exam that the professor was considering using for admittance to their Calculus 2 class. Students were asked to read the professor's syllabus, complete a survey about their impressions of the course, and then take the placement exam, okay? And they were randomly assigned to either a fixed mindset condition or a growth mindset condition. And the difference there was the syllabus language. So this is an experimental design with random assignment. The mindset cues embedded in the syllabi were from actual college math faculty syllabi, just combined. And it was constructed according to the cue categories that students had identified in a separate group of focus groups. Let me say that a different way. So prior to constructing the syllabi, they did focus groups with undergraduate students, and they asked them questions about what cues you to how the professor believes that you can succeed. What kinds of subtle things do you see in the syllabus or in class that gives you the impression about their mindset? And then they built those things into their fixed mindset syllabus or their growth mindset syllabus. So the researchers found that when the professor communicated a fixed or growth mindset, both men and women anticipated feeling less belonging in the course when it was a fixed mindset. But the effect was more pronounced for women. Women, compared to men, anticipated feeling significantly less belonging in the course than when it was taught by a fixed mindset professor. When a growth mindset professor taught the course, there were no gender differences in anticipated belonging. Make sense? So they read the two different syllabi. There were no actual professors here. This was just two different syllabi. And this is the anticipated belonging of the students who read the syllabi. Now remember, they also had them take the math placement test, So that's this one. How did the two different versions of the syllabi influence the participants' scores on the math placement test? They found that men significantly outperformed women when the course was linked to the fixed mindset syllabus and solved approximately 4 more math problems correctly on this placement test. However, when the course was taught by the growth mindset professor, or in other words, when they read the growth mindset syllabus, the gender gap in performance was reduced by 55%. That is, when faculty communicated fixed mindset beliefs, it negatively affected women's performance, but not the men's performance. So you might think, does syllabus language really make a difference? Yes, it does. It makes a difference in both how students enter the class, whether they believe that they're going to belong in the course, and in early signs, it does make a difference in their performance. So let's look at one of the specific tools in the toolkit. This is the growth mindset approach to establishing expectations. Because, honestly, because I thought this one was really, really cool. It's a great one to talk about. Now, I think knowing this audience, and when I say this audience, I mean you people specifically, I know who you are. Knowing this audience, I don't have to say this, but let's just say hypothetically that someone else watches that I have to say this for, so I'm gonna say it anyway. Somebody's gonna think, do I really have to be that careful with my language? And the answer is yes, yes you do. And when you're thinking about any kind of approach to your teaching, how you construct a test or how you construct an assignment, or if you're doing a group assignment in class and how you're gonna structure that, you're careful about all of that, right? You don't just throw questions onto a test willy-nilly. You select them carefully based on what you want to assess. You make sure that you have a balance in difficulty level and a balance of kind of complex versus less complex. So being careful about your language, about how you are talking to students and thinking about students, it's part of teaching. It's part of that structure of we are thoughtful about our approaches to each thing. So yes, we're thoughtful in how we talk about our own mindset with our students. So let's go through some of the steps here. So this is from the practice library that we looked at. It's specifically the establishing expectations practice. And it focuses on communicating course expectations in a way that emphasizes that students' abilities can be developed over time. Specifically, it promotes learning through two things. One is normalizing, and the second is providing opportunities. So what do you normalize? You normalize the experience of being challenged, because challenge spurs growth, makes you learn. And you normalize using supports as a standard aspect of the learning process, that those are normal things for college students. Also, with that, you make sure that you provide students with opportunities to reflect on their learning, to make use of resources to address gaps, and to grow their abilities throughout the term. And that this approach improves learning and academic outcomes. Just as a little teaser, if you're really interested in this, there is some research that suggests that this can accelerate over time as well. That really great belonging and mindset interventions early in a student's college career can have accelerating impacts on them throughout their career. So if you do something really great with them as freshmen, you may still be impacting their learning as juniors, even if you're not teaching them anymore. So what does this look like? So this is what we're going to do, by the way. We're going to look at 2 suggestions, and then we're going to look at a couple of examples. So the first step is you consider what you have built in the course, what feedback opportunities and resources you have available as part of your course. So that could include things like regular low stakes homeworks or quizzes, which are feedback opportunities, right? Because it gives students an opportunity to receive feedback and to gauge their learning. It can include timely, actionable feedback on course assignments and exams. It can include opportunities to ask questions or seek further feedback, like going to office hours or talking with the TA. It can include access to other resources like practice questions or study guides, answer keys in a book, access to tutoring. So you essentially make an inventory of what resources and feedback opportunities you have already built into your course. And if that list is really short and only has 1 or 2, you might want to make sure to build in a few more. And then you craft your growth mindset messaging for your course expectations. Now, that little note at the bottom about being consistent in messaging across the semester in different formats, that actually means you don't need to build all 4 of these into the syllabus or the first day, but you build this attitude and all 4 of these aspects in throughout the semester, and you kind of repeat them, you harp on them throughout the semester. So, acknowledge that it's common to be challenged by the course material and that this is an essential part of the learning process. You communicate that the intent of the course assignment is to help students develop their abilities. You tell them why you're giving them those assignments, to help them learn. You normalize the use of academic resources, reflecting on feedback, and seeking help when needed as learning strategies that are key to success. In other words, you give them a roadmap to be a successful student. And then you give specific feedback on exams and assignments and provide access to resources so that students can use the roadmap. Okay, so what does this look like? You got them? I mean, you don't memorize them, it's okay. Because these are all on the practice library, super nicely summarized. So what does this look like? Let's think about the example of challenging course material. Do you talk about challenging, that the course is challenging on your first day in class, or do you include anything in your syllabus about it? And if you don't, do you imply it? So an implication could be something like, X, Y, and Z are required prerequisites for this course. Students who have not completed those courses are unlikely to be successful. That's an implied message about the challenging course material, right?
Well, I tell them that to expect to learn to think differently and learn to think from a different perspective, but I don't think that is limiting, is it?
It is a message of challenge, right? So the reason this example here is blank is that a lot of us don't address this explicitly in our course syllabi, but some do. So this is like the pre-existing example. Here is an example that includes some of these growth mindset components. I understand that this course material can be challenging at times. Okay, by the way, this is the literal example from the practice library. I actually think it's written at too high a grade level. You should know that the average adult in the US has a reading level of about 6th grade. And 6th grade is plenty, honestly. To get along as an adult, 6th grade is plenty. But that also means that if you really want a student to understand something, it's really important to you that they understand it. Don't write it at a college level. Write it at the 6th grade level. And then when they're trying to delve into like deeply analyzed text, that's the college level stuff. So when you give instructions, don't give it at the college level, give it at the 6th grade level. That is my tip for you. So this one actually, I think, is written at a little too high a grade level, but it's really good on growth mindset. So I understand that this course material can be challenging at times, both in terms of the breadth of the subject matter and its complexity. In fact, challenges are key to your growth and development. If everything was easy, you would not be growing your knowledge and skills. The tests and assignments in this course are designed to help you build this knowledge base. Students who attend class consistently, complete all assignments, thoughtfully engage with feedback on work, develop good study strategies, and contact the TA or instructor when they are struggling can develop a thorough understanding of the course material and ultimately succeed in the course. So what's your first impression here? Is this a hard course or an easy course? To me, it looks hard. So one common misconception, by the way, is that talking about growth mindset or supports for students makes the course sound easy. To me, this course sounds hard. There's all this stuff the student has to do. And remember, oops, let's go back to this one. Does it acknowledge that it's common to be challenged? Yes. That it's part of the learning process? Yes. Was there something about assignments being used to teach and learn? Let's see. The tests and assignments are designed to help you build this knowledge base. Yes. Normalize the use of academic resources. Did it give a roadmap to success? Yes. Here are these things that you can do. Did it give specific feedback on exams? No, because there's no opportunity for that. Jessamine, can I read your comment? So Jessamine also put in the chat, in her syllabus, she has my promise to you, and it includes, I will challenge you to make your class experience as intellectually rigorous and personally engaging and meaningful as possible. I can't promise you that it will be easy, but I can promise you that I will explain my expectations and that I will do everything I can to help you succeed. Thank you. So let's look at another example. Quizzes. Let's say you give quizzes. This is an example of what my syllabus might say if I give quizzes. You'll have a quiz. It would be about that short. So here's an example. You'll have a quiz each Monday covering the material from the previous week. So if we were to follow the growth mindset messaging, what kinds of things would we want to add? Why you're given the quiz? What's the purpose of the quiz? What to do if they struggle on the quizzes? What to make of their results on the quiz? So here's an example. Quizzes are one way that we will check your learning progress in this course. You will have a quiz each Monday covering the material from the previous week. I really like this first sentence, by the way. It's one way we check your learning progress. That's why we give quizzes. See how you're doing, to check your progress. And then more explicitly, I assign these quizzes for two reasons. One reason is to show me how well students are understanding the material and to help me identify common areas where students may be struggling or have not quite mastered the material yet. This right here also normalizes that the course is challenging, right? Because there's an expectation that students may be struggling because it's hard. The other reason is to give you opportunities to assess how well you are understanding the concepts and where you need to focus more of your attention efforts to learn the course material. And then here's the roadmap. If you're struggling on the quizzes, You can speak with me, one of the TAs, your peers, make use of the academic resources available through the department and university. And then, of course, when you give a quiz, you would go back to this. When they get the feedback, you'd say, remember, this is why we give the quizzes. This is what you make of the results. You can do better. Here are the resources. Here's your roadmap to do that. Jessamine, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Is this specific example in the student experience project materials?
It is.
Oh, it's a really good one. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, I get a phone call in my office like once a month, and it's apparently this is the moment right now. Someone is calling. So, and yeah, we looked through those. They do suggest that these are some of the pitfalls to think about. One is don't emphasize the effort in the course so much that you imply that their coursework should be prioritized above all else. Because when you do that, students just do not take you seriously. They think that you are so out of touch. Your course should not be the most important thing in their lives. They have families and health. And so if you make that, if you imply that, you'll lose a little bit of that connection. They won't believe you. It's also not coddling, because sometimes it can be language that is supportive of students can be misinterpreted by some people that you're trying to be too helpful, and college should be hard. But telling students you have these 23 strategies that you can use to do better in this course is not coddling. It's giving them the tools, the power in order to take responsibility for their own learning. It's still a tough pathway. And then this third one, I think, is actually a really important one. It doesn't matter how much you talk about their potential for growth if you don't set up the course to support their learning. If they don't have opportunities to reflect on their own performance, if they aren't having opportunities for feedback, if they don't have access to resources that they can use to apply their learning strategies to, you actually haven't set up the course for growth potential. And this is particularly true if you have a very small set of resources that they can use. So if you struggle on your tests, didn't perform as well on the test as you wanted, please come talk to me. I think that's a lovely thing to say, but not everybody is going to talk to you, right? And there is a long list of reasons why they may not. If that is the only thing, then you probably haven't set the course up for students to be able to apply learning strategies who are unable to come and talk to you for some reason. There should be other things that they can access. So saying you can talk with me, you can talk with the TA, you can go to the tutoring center. There's 3 right there. And say, if you didn't do as well on the test as you would like, you can review your test. You can review another example test, and then we're going to review in class. There's another 3 there. So having a variety of resources that students can apply their strategies to actually gives them some opportunity for growth. So I'm going to stop sharing for now. So what have been some of your experiences with using growth-oriented language and feedback in class, or as a student when your faculty applied that kind of language to you? Go ahead, Anne.
My experience is that I guess I have to repeat it even more often, because even though I now devote the first day to many of the strategies and phraseology that you just mentioned, they and I suppose my eyes fall into the same old pattern and forget to reach out and communicate and make sure that you're encouraging them along the way, that it's not just always something that's being imposed upon them. So I think I need to watch out along the way and not just make it a first day thing.
Thanks, Anne. Jessamine, I see your hand.
That's so interesting, Anne, because I was thinking something kind of different in my experience is that my students in my experience have tended to pick it up really quickly as far as I'm thinking of the faculty mindset part, and read those cues and clues really astutely and really, really quickly without that much, they can really pull out. And the way they put it is that the professor cares or doesn't care. That's how they phrase it. And it's, so I don't know if that's less about the challenging or growth mindset part, but that's how they frame it. Like so-and-so doesn't care, so-and-so cares. And they pick that from those few examples.
I
Do you
think
see-
that's,
oh.
yeah, a really great point, and also likely responsive to the students' background and perceptions of the university as a caring place.
Yeah.
So if students are entering the university expecting that they will be cared for and nurtured and welcomed, then they're more likely to perceive a faculty who's not giving a lot of that window into their own thinking. They're more likely to perceive them as a supportive person. Whereas a student who's coming in recognizing that they may be the only person of their background in the class and may have negative stereotypes applied to them, if you're not explicitly caring, they may be more likely to perceive you in the global context of not a particularly supportive person, which is why we may see those exaggerated effects of impacts on women in STEM and on underrepresented minorities. So it's one reason that it is a step towards equity to be more conscious of our language. How about,
Sorry.
go ahead,
I
Anne.
guess I have a follow-up. I guess I'm not carrying through during the semester, but maybe I'm not getting through to everybody. So there are some students who recognize what I'm offering and some students who are still just dismissing it and saying there's too much work to do and I can't. So I guess I'm still not getting through to everybody is more the correct way to say it.
Gotcha. Michael, are you in a place where you can talk? I saw your chat comment.
I am. There just
All
might be a little kid noise in the background.
That's all right. Tell us about your chat comment.
Well, a lot of what you were saying, Kristen, speaks directly to me because for those of you who don't know me, here at SUNY Oswego, I teach anthropology and Native American studies. So students are oftentimes not well versed in the history of conquest and colonization, genocide and gender, race and religious freedom, all issues that are talked about in all of my classes. So I use a lot of this language, but I haven't been as deliberate, like as Jessamine says, with my promise to you. I actually use a document called the Standard Rules for the Student, first drawn up by Fela Sawande, which I'm looking for online now as we speak, that uses not simple language, like you said, Kristen. It's actually quite complex language, but I sort of on the first day challenge my students that these are the rules that I expect for you. So I try and put as much as I can on syllabus day, I try and put the onus on them. Try and put the onus on them to, by the end of this semester, be able to articulate complex thoughts regarding these controversial and potentially triggering topics. I should say this too, I also use a journal. So if anyone doesn't want to talk about them during class, or if anyone wants to write to me directly, then they have that option as well.
And I know that one of the things Michael also does in class is that he strongly emphasizes belonging-based feedback. So that when students have comments, he has a way of reinforcing the comments that emphasizes that they're valuable contributions to class. If you're curious about some of the practice library, remember that the practice library was tested with faculty, some of whom are at large institutions. So if you're thinking, but how would I do X, Y, and Z if I had a really big class and I was worried about everybody contacting me all at the same time? there are specific examples for that. So what if you're teaching a giant class, and some of the faculty who tested some of these would have been teaching courses of 500 or something like that. How do you provide this type of language and support while appropriately, there's language in the first day toolkit and the syllabus guide, like there's actually a contrasting example, one of which is like, don't contact me unless the TA says it's okay. Like you got to run your questions through them first. And then there's the other one that says, if you have questions, go to the TAs first, because they can do this and this and this and this. And if they still can't help you, then I am there for you. So it's the end result is still that the student goes to the TA first, not to the faculty member first, which is, if you had a giant class with an army of TAs, that's what you would want. But it gives the pathway for success. It gives the rationale about why and how these are learning supports. It's not like, I don't trust you to talk to me like a normal person, so please don't. It gives the rationale of, this is the way that we support learning in this class. Other final thoughts? I think we've got about 2 minutes left. Okay, I hope that you go and explore the practice library. It's honestly, I was charmed. I was like, this is the exact right length of stuff. Some concrete suggestions, some really good examples, and all on like 2 pages worth of text, basically. Exactly how much depth that you want. In terms of the first day toolkit, if you're really intrigued by the toolkit, the videos, we'll just keep this between us. Videos are not that helpful, but the checklist is. So you don't have to sit through the videos if you don't want to. They're short. They're like 5 minutes each. It's not like it's burdensome. You'd be able to do the whole thing if you watched all the videos and everything in 90 minutes. They're not that useful, but the checklist and the examples they're all there in the written text. Those I thought were very helpful. Any other thoughts? No? Thank you. It's great to see all of you, and I look forward to seeing you at all of the other sessions.
Kristen, just wanted to thank you very much for doing this. I was already planning to have my faculty do the on the SEP site, do the welcoming syllabus module, about 90, and I kind of just plopped it into my programming without having looked at it super closely. So there's a voice in the back of my head saying, I really need to make sure this is an okay source, but you just did it for me. So thank you.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought when I read the article and I started looking at it. I thought, I'll just give people like the short version. And then
Yeah, it's really helpful. Well, I'm a center of one, and I'm really trying. My number one objective is increasing inclusive teaching practices, and I can't reinvent the wheel, for content. So I thought it seemed like a great start, and that example with the quizzes, I think is really that kind of example is what a lot of people I think are gonna need and would be really, really helpful, and not a huge lift. I thought by looking at the syllabus, starting with just the syllabus, like it might seem more doable than just, you got to reinvent everything you're doing.
And that's one of the reasons I really like that module too. Like, that seems very doable, right?
Right.
Like, we talk about quizzes every time we give one, but you just have to say a couple different sentences and it becomes a growth mindset approach. Yes,
Yeah.
Exactly. I also appreciate, that you have a clear goal. Inclusive teaching is your number one. That's fabulous.
It's a pressing need. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. Really useful. Thank you.
I know.
Yes, you will check with you.
Good to see you all from the top